Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information, with some laughs, might I add. Welcome to my 8th spoiler season episode, talking about Wilds of Eldraine. I don't want to hold anybody up. Let's have a good time. Number 1. Faerie Slumber Party. For 6 mana, you could, at sorcery speed, return all creatures to their owner's hands. For each opponent who controlled a creature, you get to create 2/1/1 blue fairy tokens. So it is capped. It doesn't matter if you bounce 1 creature or 3 creatures from each opponent. You only get a max of 2 per opponent, so you could end up with 6 fairy tokens. Those tokens can't block and have flying. I think it's a cool board wipe. I wish it was per creature you bounced, but
always read the fine print, amigo.
this card's just, not as good as one would initially think it is to be. Virtuous Strength. For 1 green, you could return a creature or land from your graveyard to your hand as its adventure side, and then on its enchantment side, for 7 mana, whenever you tap a basic for mana, it produces 3 times as much. So it's not as good as Nyx Bloom Ancient, because Nyx Bloom Ancient doesn't care the land that you tap or the permanent. This specifically cares that the permanent you're tapping is a basic. It's not as good. You gotta read the fine print, and I don't see this being too fairly loved. Maybe I'd run this in a 2-color deck, probably not a 3-color deck, because I care about fixing my mana and I don't play a lot of basics anymore. I maybe max play anywhere from 9 to 12 basics in even a 3-color deck, and that number gets even smaller the more colors I add. And then 2 to 1 colors, yeah, I play tons of basics and I'd get a lot of value out of this. Human Warlock, I gotta go to the bottom here to read what it does. It's adventure side, you get to create a food. And that's for 1 mana at instant speed. And then its creature portion is a 3/2 for 3 mana, and then when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets -6/-6 on turn, where X is the amount of life you gain that turn. If you are depending on gaining the life from the food token, this essentially costs you 5 mana. I don't feel like this is a rare or deserves a rare slot. I think this is more of a uncommon kind of a card in my opinion. Wouldn't play it in standard either. Definitely not playing in commander. Virtue of Courage. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you may exile that many cards from the top of your library. You may cast those cards this turn. It's a weird impulse effect. That's the enchantment side. Good thing I know some Japanese. This says instant at the top of it, because in the English translation there is nothing. Yeah, it's a 2 mana instant on its adventure side that deal 2 damage to any target. It's just an expensive card. I don't know if you could do non-combat damage the turn you play it, because this does cost 5 mana to play its enchantment side, so it's like a turn 5 do nothing, and then the following turn you could do something. You could see a ton of cards with this thing doing non-combat damage. I probably would give this a shot. I like the instant adventure on this thing. It's probably worth like me just chucking into my red decks just to give it a shot, but it's cool. I wonder what it's going to settle at price-wise. It's not as good as the black one, though. Tegwill's Scoring. For 6 mana, you may cast it as though I had flash. By tapping 3 untapped creatures you control with flying, in addition to paying other costs, you destroy all creatures, then create 3/1/1 black fairy creature tokens with flying. It's a 6 mana board wipe, and it's not worth the 3/1/1s. The upside is if you have 3 flying untapped creatures, you could do this at instant speed and catch people with their pants down.
We are dead! We are all dead!
Shadow Puppeteers. Flying in Ward 2, it's a 4/4 for 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you create 2/1/1 Black Fairy Rogues. Flying, whenever a creature with flying attacks, you may have it become a red dragon, which just changes its types and colors and power toughness. Weirdly, though, this is already a 4/4. If you're playing a flying tribal deck, this might be a solid win condition, because you just rush out a bunch of little things, and then you play this, and then it turns all your flying guys into really big things. And I guess the other clause that's nice about this is if you have a developed board already, this thing does something the turn it comes down. I could see myself running this in, like, say, the Locust God, because you make so many passive 1/1 flyers with haste anyways. You'd probably play this with a full board from those, and you probably win the game. Nettling Nuisance. For 3 mana, it's a 3/1 with flying. Whenever one or more fairies you control deal damage to a player, that player creates a 4/2 red pirate. The creature can't block, and the token is goaded for the rest of the game. Interesting. So the token itself has the goaded clause on it, meaning if Nettling Nuisance disappears, it doesn't matter. I kind of like that, because I've always been a little hesitant to play these kinds of cards that have a clause that's basically only if this permanent stays in play. This, you don't care. Right up until it's 1/1, and then the goad mechanic doesn't matter, and those are 4/2 pirates that you have to be concerned about. Hopefully you have an end game plan once it turns into 1/1, if you do run this. Misleading Signpost. When it it enters during your declare attacker step, you may reselect which player or permanent target attacking creature is attacking. It's a mana rock, and you only get to pick one attacker, so battle cruisery kind of stuff is super popular in EDH, so this could be a relevant thing that keeps you alive, or maybe even kill someone. My going rate for rocks, though, is 2 mana, and even though this has flash and has that extra ETB trigger on it, it's still not my cup of tea. It's also one of those things, like, it has to be a very specific timing of being during attacker step. It's like flickering this could be a little weird, too, if you're playing this in a flicker deck for that kind of value. Malleable Impostor. Flash and flying for 4 mana. It's a 0/0. Whenever it enters battlefield, copy a creature an opponent controls, except it's a fairy shapeshifter in addition to other types and has flying. Clone your opponent's stuff. You can never target your own stuff. That's a little disappointing, but at least you have increased odds of having something to copy. You know what I mean? Like, if it just said your board, kind of like Spark Double, then it depends on only one source of things to copy, while versus this, you could copy 3 different things. I unfortunately can't run this in my slot machine deck because I only care about making copies of my own stuff. A little bummed about this, so I was hoping I could throw some kind of cool shapeshifter in my deck. Faerie Bladecrafter. For 3 mana, it's a 2/2 of flying. Whenever one or more fairies control deal damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. When it dies, each opponent loses X life, you gain X life, where X is its power. The fairy clause, it's a very slow way of souping this thing up. If you want to make it bigger real fast, just go the alternate route. Don't play this fairly, because I think what you want to be doing is getting this as big as you possibly can, as fast as you can, and then it forces people in these weird scenarios where they don't want to get hit by it, but they also don't want to get drained on its death.
You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
I'd give this a try in like a Voltron kind of a strategy. Blightwing Bandit. It's a 4-drop, 2/2 flying death toucher. Whenever you cast your first spell during an opponent's turn, look at the top card of that player's library. Exile it face down. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. You're basically stealing people's cards off the top of their library. Hopefully you hit spells, because you can actually play it if it's a land, because it doesn't specify. It says that's kind of cool. You just have to be playing a lot of things with flash and or instant speed, because that's the only way you get this trigger, and you're limited to just 1 per turn. I don't know if you want to jump through the hoops, but if you're already doing the flash instant speed kind of thing, then maybe you want this. I guess I want more for my 4-drop slot than something like this. Something a little more guaranteed. Decks are so synergistic nowadays anyways that like ripping cards off of other people's libraries as card advantage isn't all that reliable. Archmage of Echoes. 5-drop, 4/4 fairy with flying in Ward 2. Whenever you cast a fairy wizard, permanent spell, copy it. Ooh, that sounds pretty wild. I think the fairy part is the more negligible thing. It's the wizard that concerns me way more. This card is a lot better than it is just because of the word wizard. Wizard is a very popular archetype in Commander, and I think they're all going to want this, because having just one isn't enough. Unfinished business. 5 mana sorcery, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, then return 2 aura or equipment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield attached to that creature. Pretty dense little sorcery. I don't know what the mana value of that is. You get to return essentially 3 things from your graveyard to play, and 2 of those 3 things get reattached to your big boy. I think this is worth trying if you're in a Voltron strategy. Timber Paladin. As long as it's enchanted with exactly 1 aura, has a base tower toughness of 3 and 3. If it's enchanted by exactly 2 auras, it's a 5/5 with vigilance. As long as it's enchanted by 3 or more auras, it has a base power and toughness of 10, 10, vigilance, and trample. This card rewards you for Voltron. Not only are those enchantments probably making this bigger and giving it stats, it's also scaling up on its own. This could be a very lethal attacker real fast. And it's cheap. It's really mana efficient of 2 mana. Ox Drover. 4 mana. It's 4/4 vigilance. Can't be blocked by Oxen. Whenever Ox Drover enters the battlefield or attacks, target opponent creates a 2/4 and you draw a card. The card advantage is cool. I guess the stat block for its CMC is nice. Those tokens could be used to attack me.
I need to wear his stomach skin like a unitard.
Let me know in the comments if you like this card. I think my 4-drop slots are just crowded and I don't really need this personally. Not even my mono white decks, I don't think I'd run it. Liberated Livestock. When it dies, create a 1/1 cat with lifelink, a 1/1 bird with flying, a 2/4 ox. For each of those tokens, you may put an aura card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield attached to it. So you can max return 3 auras if you have them in your graveyard. It's a weird recovery plan because you're building tall and this forces you to go wide and put one on each of them. But I mean, it's still value that you're getting back. Paying 6 mana to put 4 power and 6 toughness, which is the equivalent of the Ox here. And then who knows how many auras you could grab from your hand or graveyard and enchant your stuff. So I don't know if it's worth your time and effort just because you're going in multiple directions with this card. Directions you don't want to be going at that. Knickknak Ouphe. Enters with X counters, has X and its converted cost. When it enters the battlefield, reveal top X cards of your library. You may put any number of auras with mana value X or less from among them on the field. Then put all cards revealed this way that weren't put on the battlefield on the bottom of your library in random order. So the auras that you're digging for don't specifically say they have to enchant this guy, but I imagine you're running so few creatures in your deck that that's probably how it's going to shake out. It's a weird looking little dude. I don't know what else to tell you. At least he scales up with +1/+1 counters too. You will have probably a really big creature depending on how much mana you're able to sink into this thing and how you built your deck with the aura ratio. Giant Inheritance. It's a 5-drop aura. Enchanted creature gets +5/+5 and has, whenever this creature attacks, create a monster roll token attached up to one target creature, meaning that creature gets +1/+1 in a trample. When Giant Inheritance is put in the graveyard from battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. That's nice. I love these auras that return themselves once they go to the graveyard. Some of the old classic enchantments do this. Most of them are 2-drops, like Spirit Loop, part of that like cycle of enchantments that do this. But now you can make one really threatening thing and do it over and over again. This is an exciting card. I would probably play this in all my green decks. Takes the weakest part of auras and just fixes it all on its own. That brings us to the end of episode 8 of Wilds of Eldraine spoilers. I think my favorite card of the day, it's probably gonna have to be Giant Inheritance, even though that was the last card I covered. I just like the design of this card and I like how resilient it is and threatening it is. It's one of those cards that stand on its own. You could probably play it in any deck with green and it'll justify its slot, versus a lot of the other stuff I saw, it's very niche, goes in a very specific deck. I think this card will be popular and be worth something upon release. Closing thoughts about today. We're at 198 of 233 cards, so I got 35 left. I don't know how many of those are rares and mythics, but I'm going to talk about them. I'm really excited about playing the commanders that I've seen from this set. There's a lot of them I want to play. There'll be some downtime between me doing the spoiler season and me actually playing those commanders. I'll probably do a poll and I'll play them in the order of which gets the most votes. You get to see me practice what I preach in these spoiler videos and the cards that I like and don't like and what I recommend to people, what I wouldn't recommend to people. I'll also put up deck lists, and I think I want to incorporate something new for the Wilds of Eldraine commanders I want to play. I'm going to record myself building the decks from beginning to end, so people could be a part of that and maybe learn something. And I don't know if people want that. Comment down below. I just had that idea today. Everyone have a good night. Thank you for watching. Bye.